What is this consciousness of love that I'm discussing? It's the force that unifies, that comes together, that refuses to separate. Anything that separates is not love. The union of love is not a feeling. Sure, it may contain moments of heightened feelings of love, but the container of love for a couple is actually a consciousness. It's a devotion to the consciousness of love in all facets of your treatment towards that person and your thoughts about them. Because the feeling of love can go, but the consciousness never does. When you're arguing about 10 things you can't remember, you're just stuck in the consciousness of separation, that you're wrong, I'm right, I'm better. Love is a perspective in the mind that one can use to navigate and discuss potential conflicts in a couple with. Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of the New Age Sage podcast. Today's a big one because I've been approaching the previous podcast from a lens of being single in the world and how to go about being single in a way to increase your chances of finding your highest partner in love, and how to navigate all the shenanigans and pitfalls in dating, and how to not take certain situations in dating as a way to make yourself insecure, etc. Now I'm in the container of love. I have a girlfriend. We're in love. It's serious. She's my soulmate. She's everything I've been looking for. She's exactly what I asked for, plus more, and more than I can even describe. I've never known and felt love like this. Now, because I'm now in this level of the game, in this reality, different perspectives arise that can help me teach different things. And number one thing is that I want to focus on today's episode is the societal confusion and denial we have about what love actually means. We are indoctrinated to believe love is just a feeling. And once we feel that love, everything else will explain itself. So if I'm a man and I see a woman and she's beautiful and nice and I feel love, it's over. It's the feeling that happens. And if that feeling fades, then we're no longer in love and it's over, and I divorce and it's done. So if we follow that rubric, if love is just a feeling, then how do you explain domestic violence? How do you explain the fact that most women's biggest danger lives in the home with them? But if a man loves them and he's beating them up, then how is love a feeling? If all couples experience moments of yelling at each other at certain points, and name calling and shaming and being aggressive, is that love? If you cheat on someone and you betray them and you become sadistic in that process of getting pleasure in your partner finding out you're cheating on them, which we all do if you cheat, because they're going to find out anyway, is that love? So how can you be in love and believe that the feeling of love is what should be if it's the common experience of love is domestic violence, name calling, aggression, and cheating? If love is a feeling, then that stuff wouldn't happen, right? But the fact that those things happen in the name of love is exactly what this podcast episode will be dedicated to, which is the container, the union of love is not a feeling. Sure, it may contain moments of heightened feelings of love, but the container of love for a couple is actually a consciousness. It's a devotion to the consciousness of love in all facets of your treatment towards that person and your thoughts about them. Because the feeling of love can go, but the consciousness never does. So if you're about to argue with your partner and you're about to yell at them and call them names, even though you may not feel love in that moment, the consciousness of love as a concept, love as an idea, exists in your mind, in consciousness. So what love really means to me isn't what we've been told. It's not a feeling. Sure, it is a feeling sometimes, but if you're only going off the feeling of love, that's not a useful rubric to go about love with, because if you say, I love you, but I'm yelling at you and cheating on you and beating you up, that's obviously not love. So love is actually a consciousness. Love is a perspective in the mind that one can use to navigate and discuss potential conflicts in a couple with. So what does that all mean? What does the consciousness of love really mean? To answer the question of what is the consciousness of love, we have to begin by discussing what is love? What is this thing called love? Because it's obviously not just a feeling, it's something deeper. What is that deeper definition of love that we don't really understand? I'm going to try my best to do this. Love is the force that unifies, that comes together, that refuses to separate. Again, love unifies, connects, does not separate. Okay? Anything that separates is not love. So if we were to consider fights in a couple, right? Where you're judging them, calling them names, thinking negatively of them and speaking from that place, wanting to pull away and run away from them and be avoidant, that primitive instinct to separate, to say, I'm right, you're wrong, fuck you, you're a bitch, you were a slut before, like all that stuff that we experience, sadly, is not love. It's separation. So in your mind, if you are in love with someone, from a place of pure truth, that should mean I'm devoted to not separating from unification, to understanding you. Now, to prove my point, think about almost every single fight you've had with a couple or in a past relationship or in a relationship right now. The fight will continue as long as you both feel separated from each other in the perspectives of I'm right, you're wrong. This conversation will keep going until I prove that I'm right and then you know and admit you're wrong. Okay? That battle could last months, years, 10 years till death until both sides decide to unify, because love is the force of unification, right? So that proves my point here, that you may be in love with someone because you feel love towards them sometimes, yet you argue a lot. But if you argue a lot, you're not really in love because you're devoted to the consciousness of separation. Again, when you argue, you're separated. You won't find, the argument only resolves itself and there's finally peace. Like, oh my God, thank God we're done with that fight, because you both decided to unify. Okay? So all that needs to be done when a couple reaches separation is to unify as fast as possible. And again, this can't be done if it's just going off the feeling of love, right? Because if you're really fucking pissed off and you believe they're actually really wrong and you're really right, whatever that means, it's a complete illusion, right and wrong, because there is never no right and wrong according to God. If you really believe you're right and you really believe they're wrong and you're super angry, the feeling of love can't just zap you in that moment. Like, whoo, I'm in love now, it's all good. Life doesn't work that way. A unification can only be reached in those circumstances of separation when the consciousness of love is consulted. And what is this consciousness of love? What is this consciousness of love that I'm discussing? Again, at a very basic definition, it's the force that unifies, right? And that means that if you're devoted to unification, that begins with devoting your thoughts about them to unification, which means to not trust and believe any thoughts that force you to separate. Your thoughts should try and understand their side the best and to unify through this understanding. So the consciousness of love in an argument with someone you love, in a partnership, is to commit to not trust and believe any thoughts that force you to separate from them, to believe you're better or right, and do your best to understand their side, no matter how wrong you may think they are, because there is no wrong and right according to love. There's just unification. And unification only comes when you stop believing thoughts of separation and you understand them. Because you can't hate someone and judge them and understand them at the same time. Judgment and hate is a procrastination you take to not understand someone. It's a lazy person's way out of being in a state of love. I've been mentioning the concept of right and wrong, but really understand that the consciousness of love does not understand the concept of right and wrong. Because what does right and wrong do? If I'm right and you're wrong, and we're in a couple, that belief makes us both separate, because I have to prove to you that you're wrong. And being wrong means what? You're beneath me, I'm above you. That's separation. Me being right and you being wrong is a separation. Right, wrong, beneath, above. Love, in the state of love, there's no separation in terms of hierarchy. It's all equal, it's all one, it's all love. So when you're in the right and wrong, you can't come together as a unifying force of love until you realize that there is no right and wrong. And the more you blame someone as in they're wrong, I'm right, you're refusing to understand their pain in the current moment. So I know it's as tempting as ever to really prove that you are right and they are wrong. But when you're proving to someone they're wrong, you're separating yourself as someone above them and they're beneath you. And in that separation, all love is lost because what? Because love is unification. We can't unify if I believe you're beneath me, and I believe you're beneath me if I believe you're wrong. Okay? Now, it could get complicated because it's like, truth is important, right? And someone could be away from truth. The concept of truth. There's a very different thing in being like, there could be a deviation in truth, but I still love this person and understand the way they feel versus you're wrong, you're stupid, blah, 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 blah. There's a big difference there. So yes, you can be devoted to truth, but sometimes literal truth isn't important. That may sound crazy, but sometimes the way someone feels is more important. So truth is a tricky concept because the ego, the mind, left brain, thinks truth is just literal fact. But literal fact is complicated because literal fact is not fact most of the time, and feelings are facts too. The way you feel is a fact. That's the most truth possible. So someone's perception created from a feeling could be wrong, but their feeling is correct. I've noticed this in union. My girlfriend may say things that are not true, not rooted in fact, but the way she feels is very true, and the way she feels is a result of my actions. And she creates a perception from that feeling that then gets casted to me. The perception may be wrong, but her feeling's true. And the more I look at her feeling as like, your feeling is true, you're right to feel that way. Your perception may be off, but I'm with you in the way you're feeling. That's different than just being you're wrong. Everything about you is wrong right now. The way you feel is wrong. What you're thinking is wrong. When someone feels like their partner is pushing them in the box of wrong, they lose all love for them because they're feeling separated and beneath them. And when you feel like someone's putting you beneath them, how could you feel like you're in love with them? When you are in a disagreement with a partner and you feel like they're pushing you in the box of wrong, it's really hard to feel like you love them because they're separating you from love. They're separating you from unifying with them, and they're putting you beneath them because you're wrong and they're right. So only until you feel like their concept of being right is out the window and all they care about is unifying, you can't feel loved. So the consciousness of love in that moment is simply saying, I throw away the concept of right and wrong because love does not know right and wrong, because love does not separate. The only thing I could do to restore love and integrate the consciousness of love is to consult the force of unifying. How can we unify as fast as possible? Now, I'm not perfect. I fuck this shit up all the time, right? I'm human. And I think the best way to get better as a partner in love is not to shame yourself when you make mistakes and think about that mistake over and over again. It's to pride yourself on how fast you correct the mistake. If I do something wrong with my partner, I shouldn't shame the mistake and stay in that space, oh my God, I fucked up, because no matter how amazing of a partner you are, or how in love you are, you're going to make some mistakes. So the metric should actually be, how fast do I correct that mistake? Through apologizing and through creating an intentional word as to how I'll correct this behavior, and take that inner homework forward and show them in a week, a month, a year that I've really done the work to correct this mistake. If you're someone who's very critical of yourself, it can be hard to be in a couple because you're going to constantly shame yourself for your mistakes, but those mistakes are just there to make you a better person if you use them as a signpost to credit yourself and how fast you correct them. So we're going to make mistakes here. I make mistakes constantly. I'm a fucking dumbass with my girlfriend a good amount. Nothing severe, but I'll say some comments that aren't great. I at times I'll deny the way she feels. At times I'll say I'll put her in the box of wrong. But I'm getting much better at correcting the mistake faster and not doing it again. That's all we can really ask for as humans, is to understand we're going to mistake. We're going to sin. I don't believe in sin, but it's a good concept archetypically. We're going to sin, quote unquote, but how fast you correct that mistake and repent our actions and create a better plan forward is what we should pride ourselves on as humans, is to understand we'll make mistakes. However, my ability to correct them is very fast. That's a sign of a good person. A good person is not someone who doesn't make mistakes. It's someone who understands they'll make mistakes, but they pride themselves on how fast they correct them with apologies and a plan to show they'll correct that behavior going forward by doing the inner homework required to heal the wound. Okay. to tell a story of one recent stupid argument I had. Stupid, actually led to a better place. Was this, and I'm going to try and be open, and I apologize to my girlfriend if she doesn't want this revealed, but this is the boat we're in, and it's not nothing crazy. So, we were in Hawaii, and I have a house in a gated community. And in the gated community, you'd have a golf cart around. Now, I'm not the best golf cart driver. I can be reckless. That's important context here. She wanted to drive one day. Sure, honey, drive. And the golf cart paths are pretty narrow. It's a two-way path. So if you're not super on the right side of the road and there's blind spots, you can risk crashing into someone. Now, I said, I said, hey, you're driving on the left. Like, stop doing that. In a very judgmental way of making her feel like she can't drive and that I'm shaming her and all this stuff's coming up for her, right? Now, it's true, she should not be driving on the left. However, the way I delivered it and the fact that I'm not a good driver, I do reckless things, in her mind goes, who is he to say that I don't know how to drive, right? So this caused her to get angry and have a reactionary response as to, like, you drive like shit. Why are you telling me what ways to not drive when you can barely drive? Because she got angry about that, then I got angry. Like, why are you getting so angry about me telling you that you can't drive on the left side of the road? Because that's, to me, in my male brain, it's like, that's a fact. It doesn't matter whether you think I'm a hypocrite or not. That's a fact. And then she got angry because you go back and forth, right? Angry, I'm right, you're wrong. And then she called me a name, which happens. I've called people names before. Not a terrible one, just a silly one. And I got angry because she called me a name. And this is a funny part about arguments as a couple, is that when you argue as a couple, the first thing you argue about ends up being basically a map of 10 different arguments that you end up going deeper and deeper on. And by hour 4, you have 20 different things you're arguing about. Why? Why, when you argue with someone you love, you end up arguing about 10 different things at the end of the argument, and you don't solve any of them for ages? Why is that? Because the rabbit hole of separation opens fucking fast like a quicksand vacuum. Because when you separate, when you're entertaining the consciousness of separation, if I'm right and you're wrong, the more angry you get and the more entrenched you get in your box of right and wrong, the more you push. You separate. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. And now we have 10 things that you're wrong about and I'm right about, and we can't unify until I believe that you can admit you're wrong about 10 things, right? So the more you need them to be wrong about 10 things and more things, the more you separate, because you're in the consciousness of separation and you're ignoring the fact that the consciousness of love is unification. And when you're in that place of no man's land where you're arguing about 10 things you can't remember, you're just stuck in the consciousness of separation, that you're wrong, I'm right, I'm better, right? Okay, in this specific instance, space was required, separation was required, but separation done consciously is not separation. That may sound weird, let me explain. If we were in the middle of an argument and we're 10 layers into this argument of right and wrong, and I was like, you're too angry, you're being crazy, what the fuck's wrong with you, I'm leaving, and I run out the door and went on a 2-hour-long walk, okay? Or I went to a friend's house for 6 hours. That's what a lot of couples do. That's not healthy. What is healthy is saying, hey, my feelings are out of whack. I can't think clearly. I need to come back to my senses of trying to unify with you. Please give me some space and we can come back and talk in an hour when I'm more peaceful and in the lens of trying to unify, because right now I'm stuck in my ego. That's not separation. That's saying, hey, I feel separated right now. If I speak from this place, we're going to go deeper and deeper. Allow me space to breathe so I can unify again. So that's conscious separation, which means separating in a way to regain the feeling of I want to unify. If you're in a conversation of separation and argument in a couple, and you feel like you're right and they're wrong, the more you're in that consciousness, the more that separation is going to push, and it'll only stop pushing until you have the feeling of, I want to unify with this person, I love this person, and love means I want to unify with them. So sometimes space is required to gain the feeling and consciousness of unification. So I took that space to sit down and just put my phone away and breathe and literally pray and say, force of love, give me the wisdom required to unify with the person I love so much. I devote myself to unification, and I'm too separated at the moment to trust my own mind. Please show me the way to unify. After about an hour and a half, I went back downstairs. We looked at each other, and guess what? We're both in the consciousness of unification. We looked at each other and we're like, we want to connect, right? And it's a feeling, it's a consciousness of we both want to unify. We're done separating. I have no interest in separating because I don't care if you're wrong and I'm right because I just love you, right? So we came together and both understood how we both engaged in behaviors that forced us to separate. We were both stuck in the illusion of I'm right, you're wrong, and pushing that over and over again. And we sat down and talked about how can we unify faster, right? We're separated. I love you. Let's unify. How do you unify? You have to use each moment of argument and separating as a couple in love as a vehicle to understand what caused you to separate in the first place and address that and see it as a point of potential unification. So, what does that mean for me? What upset me was the fact that she got angry over something that was so simple that I perceived as fact. Right? This is just true. It doesn't matter how I say it or the way I said it from, it's just true. And if you get angry at truth, then who are you, right? Now, that's the person she is. She's lovely, she's very calm, but at times she can react. That's fine. That's a feeling, right? And if I treat that feeling with more anger, like what the fuck's wrong with you? Why are you reacting this way to a fact? I lose unification, right? Because if she's angry, I've done something to make her feel unsafe, no matter how factual that may have been. The fact that she feels unsafe is my problem because I love her and she's a woman and she feels safe. So she felt unsafe. Doesn't matter how she got there, she's unsafe. Now, if I meet that unsafety with further unsafety, the more we're going to separate. So I realized in that moment, okay, next time she gets reactive, I have to calm down and see I made her feel unsafe. No matter if she's wrong or right, I need to make her feel safe because when she's safe and I'm safe, we can unify. So in that moment, instead of reacting and name calling, just taking a step back and being like, okay, she's angry, she's unsafe. Let me try and restore safety, and then this conversation won't even matter. That's what happens is when we separate as a couple, or people separate as a couple, one of them just lost safety. So instead of arguing and separating more by believing in the illusion of right and wrong, just see someone who feels unsafe, who needs love in that moment, and how can you give it to them rather than separating more. Now, her side of the argument, which is interesting, is she reacted too fast. She took something small and reacted fast. Now, sure, that's who she is, right? But in her mind, it's okay, next time, instead of reacting angrily, how can I take that instinct to say, hey, honey, when you say something like that, I know it's true, but the way you said it makes me feel unsafe. That's easy solution, right? I meet her anger with more compassion. She meets my sternness and matter of fact with more compassion and patience. So that is now the solution we came with going forward to not have this issue again. Now, unifying after separating as a couple is important in two ways. One, in actually unifying, surrendering egos and realizing there is no right and wrong if we're together. Because if I'm right and you're wrong, it means that I'm putting you beneath me and I don't want you to put you beneath me because I love you. Secondly, there has to be a task of inner homework because in any argument, two people fucked up. And if two people fucked up, there's two things, mistakes happened that can be healed and corrected by healing the wound that caused it. And if both people address those inner wounds and do their inner homework over and over again, the same issues won't happen. The worst thing I can see in couples, I'm trying my best not to do, but it's tempting to do, is to have an argument, come together and resolve it just because you want to not be in an argument. You don't actually resolve it. You just say, whatever, let's forget it. Let's forget the argument is not the way forward because something in you caused the argument and something in her caused the argument energetically, and it's both your responsibilities to heal it so that same argument doesn't happen again, because if you don't heal it, it'll happen over and over and over again. So it's important to take moments of separation as a couple to address and understand what caused us to separate in both of us, and how can we both heal that wound inside both of us and do our inner homework to heal and create a better union going forward. I explain this as a concept and what to think about in the actual moment of distress and triggers. But it's important to actually remain in the consciousness of love as much as possible, because when you remain in that, even before the argument, arguments don't happen. Arguments only happen when you separate from the consciousness of love. So I'll present some tips I think that we should all master that really help us stay in the consciousness of love for as long as possible, so that when those triggers arise, we meet them with love rather than separation. Here are some master tips to remain in the consciousness of love. These are evolved around understanding what love really means, and the more you master these, the more you just remain in the consciousness of love. I don't know why I have such a hard time saying consciousness, but okay, the first one is the heart accepts, the mind fixes. What does that mean? The mind wants to constantly change one's partner to meet their imaginary standards of perfection. And the heart loves exactly where they are because they know it's perfect, right? The heart understands everything's perfect. The mind needs to fix things to fit its standards of perfection. But what's trippy about this is that who the fuck am I to think that my standards of what I think should be reality is more important than millions of people's, and then higher, the galaxy, deities, and God itself? Like, who am I to believe my perception of what I think should occur is more valid than every single other power in the universe? That's way more than me. I'm a drop in the ocean, and I believe what I think should be right is more important than the ocean itself. That's the grand illusion that fucks us up in relationships, is that we believe that what we think this person should be like is truth, rather than God's truth, that they are the way they are, and that's perfect. So whenever you're entertaining the possibility of, I want to fix this person because who they are is wrong, the minute you entertain that loop, you're out of love. You're separated, because if you think someone's wrong and you need to fix them, what does that do? I separate. I am above them. If you're looking at your lover and you're thinking, I have to change this pattern and fix them, you're not out of love, because you separated yourself as the fixer, which means you're more healed and they're not healed, which means you're not unified. If you see your lover as perfect, you're unified. If you see them as broken and you have to fix them, you're separated and you're above them, which means it's not love. It's tough. And when you meet your partner with the perspective of, I'm better than you, I'm healed, they will feel so pushed away because they don't feel unified and connected. You can't feel connected to someone you love if you feel like they're trying to fix you. Because if they're trying to fix you, it means they perceive they're above you. If they're above you, they see you as beneath them. And if you're above and beneath, you're not together. Okay, so how do you consult your heart at the moment where you feel like you have to fix someone? You have to understand that they are perfect. And sure, your ego may think they're not perfect, but to you they have to be perfect because you're in love with them. You're not in love with the idea of them. You're not in love with the possibility of them. You're in love with them. And if you're in love with them, you have to accept that they are the way they are. So this is a tough one. I can go on for hours proving this concept, but it's more wise to meet someone where they're at, not try and change them, and just work on your reactions. We fuck up as a partner when we think I have to change their behavior rather than I have to change my response to their behavior. It's much wiser seeing someone as they are and then saying, how can I adapt myself to meet this behavior better, than trying to change them and fix them. Now, of course, there's a line with fucking severe abuse. I'm not saying that. It's very different. I'm saying this about little things, like they might get a little angry, a little jealous, a little emotional, a little mean, a little bitchy, a little assholey. Instead of saying, I have to fix this behavior, this small problem, just change your reaction to that behavior. So, for example, my partner can get easily angry sometimes. I have my own shit. I can get very easily jealous at times. We all have our shit. We're equally messed up. I can say that about love, is that we are equally messed up, and it's beautiful and I love it. So I'm not going to think, before I was wrong, I have to fix and change her anger. That's not a wise decision, because that's not my control. What is in my control is saying, I expect her to get easily angry sometimes. How can I meet that anger in a way to increase love in the highest fashion? How much better and wiser is that than saying I can fix them and change them? So the heart accepts, the mind fixes really means, what that really means is that I accept the way you are. The wisest chess move I can make on this board is to change my reaction to your behavior to increase love. Again, if it's a severely wrong, abusive behavior, don't listen to me. If it's something small, which it most likely is, just adapt your behavior to accept them as they are and change your reaction to meet them with more love. Okay, number 2. The heart is always here right now, which means love is always here right now. The mind will always create problems out there. So again, the heart's here right now, the mind's always out there in the future. What does that mean? To be in a state of love means to be fully immersed in the now and to understand that the now is perfect. The mind can never be here now because the mind believes perfection is met in meeting our own expectations. So the heart understands everything is God, everything is one. If everything is one, and I am this drop in the massive ocean, the wisest move I can make is to surrender to the ocean and trust that everything is divine and perfect. And to be in a state of heart expansion and to be in that flow, you have to believe, even at a psychological level, everything is working out in the highest good. The minute you believe that your expectation of what should be is not meeting reality, love's gone. Think about it. When you have a heart expansive experience, what part of you is thinking this should be different, right? If I could think of an example, right? When I listened to Coldplay play Viva La Vida live a couple years ago, in that moment, my heart was expanding because I was like, this is the best performance I've ever seen. Everyone's vibing high. This is beautiful. It's amazing. I was in such an expansive state because I believed deep down, this is perfect. This cannot change because it's amazing. Now, that perspective should be applied to every moment of life because everything is God. If everything is God, everything is perfect. But our egos think that my expectation of what should be is not what actually is, and we'll suffer until our expectation is met. So, the mind will look at a partner and say, make up a problem that I think we have to fix, and then I go, I have to fix this so I can be happy. What if it just was? It's perfect. There is no issue, right? This is complicated because sometimes there are issues, but most of the time we just make a mountain out of a molehill. So what tripped me out, and I teared up about it in private, was this: I'm in a state of love. That's the most beautiful love I've ever experienced. I have the most amazing partner I could possibly imagine and more. I'm finally in a state of pure love and happiness, and I'm addicted to making problems. I can't be happy. I can't be in a state of love. My mind's always dropping nuclear bombs because it has to constantly have its expectations met to be happy. Now, in that moment, I looked up to God and I said, I have to surrender my mind's addiction to constantly analyzing reality to meet its standards, because its standards are a complete illusion that reality can never meet, because I'm not the creator. I don't create life. I'm not the creator of reality. But if I keep perceiving things that aren't there, I'm creating an illusion that isn't real, and it'll keep pulling me further and further away from love. How can I make a better example of this? When your flight's delayed for 2 hours, okay? Is it wiser to just accept the flight's delayed and do your best to create a plan to enjoy yourself, go eat something, go to the lounge, watch a movie? Or is it better to sit there on your ass complaining in your mind, trying to fix it by thoughts? This can't be. How can this be? Is a pilot there? Da, 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 da. That's the illusion, right? The wisest move is to accept the flight's delayed. I live right now. That's the truth. I love right now. This is perfect. I'll do what I can to enjoy this, rather than I'm going to think my way out of this and fix this by predicting it. Is the pilot there? Da, 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 da. I'm going to take the app. I'm going to check the phone. Is the weather? Is the rain? It's a complete illusion, and that same thing should be applied to every single thing in life, because we really have no fucking control. We really can't change anyone. You can't change your partner. The wisest thing you can do is to accept them as they are right now, because that's the only way you can feel love for them. Lastly, the mind judges, the heart understands. When you are judging someone, you are separating. If I judge my partner who I supposedly love, it means I'm placing myself above them. If I'm above them, they're beneath me, which means we're separated deeply and we're not unified. If we're not unified, we're not in love. Unification is synonymous with understanding. We can't be separated as a couple if I understand you. Because if I understand you truly, if I truly understand you, I have compassion and empathy for you, which means we can unify. The consciousness of love is a unifying force. Unification only comes when you understand someone. So rather than trying to fix the problem and fix them and change them, understand them and understand why they feel the way they feel. When you understand why they feel the way they feel, you now have an invitation to unify, because if you love them, you want them to be happy and in a state of higher love. So you don't care if you're fucking right or wrong because they're not happy. I've laid out some very important tips to stay in the consciousness of love, which are, as it lays out, the heart accepts, the mind fixes. Accept your partner, don't try and fix them. The heart is here right now, the mind creates problems out there. Stay here right now, and how right now is always perfect, not some problem that's to be fixed constantly. The mind judges, the heart understands. Another one that's useful is the mind creates problems, the heart never has one. That one resonates too. Your mind will always set bombs to create a reason to not be peaceful so it can maintain its livelihood of having to fix and control reality. The minute you throw that away and understand the heart never has to change and fix things because the heart always knows everything's perfect, that's a much more reliable way to live life. If you need your mind to be happy, you'll be miserable because your mind can only be happy if its expectations of reality are met. Now, the mind's expectations of reality can never be met because we don't create reality. We are simply living in it. So the heart is wiser because the heart understands I have no control. The best option I have is to trust that what's happening right now is perfect, because it is, because nothing else is happening. Even if you aren't religious, the present moment is always perfect because there's nothing different. I can't change it. Therefore, it has to be perfect because it is. It just is. I can't do anything about it, so it's perfect. I can't change anything. All right. Now, another step to understand in staying in the consciousness of love is to understand what is the opposite of love consciousness. What is that? This may sound weird. It's something I call vampire consciousness. What is that? Okay. Let's start off with exploring this. I watched a vampire movie called Sinners. It's actually a very good, entertaining movie, but I'm sure the director of it would be very confused as to why I perceive what I perceive from watching that movie, because it had nothing to do with the plot of the movie. It's just in understanding what the archetype of a vampire really means. So archetypes are essentially characters we create in movie, TV, media, fiction, mythology. They're not characters, they're actually energy potentials in the collective consciousness that we can tap into and become. So Jesus, Christ, is an archetype that we can all tap into to become the consciousness of, right? Lucifer is a character, an archetype, an energy field we can all become. John Wick, Batman, they're all potential energy fields personified as a character that we can all tap into and become. That's what an archetype is. That's pretty scary. Like, we can all become Scarface. We can all become the Joker. And that happens. You fall in love with the character and you start acting like them. That's the real reality of archetypes. Okay. So what is a vampire archetype? I'll explain why I'm discussing this in a second. A vampire archetype in mythology is a parasitic consciousness that once it finds a host, it takes over its personality to be that of a vampire and follow the consciousness of a vampire, which is to take light, to literally take life away, life, and to spread darkness to them so they become possessed and an agent of darkness. So the character stays the same, the personality of the vampire is the same, but their overall consciousness is hijacked and committed to a higher plan of taking life, sucking light away, and putting darkness in a vehicle of light. So if I'm a vampire and I see a nice, beautiful, feminine young woman and I go, tasty, and I bite her neck, she then remains the same person, but the consciousness she's devoted to and absorbed by is that of which takes light and takes life away and energy away to imprint darkness. So it's essentially a parasitic consciousness that takes over hosts minds to be an agent of destruction and fear to take away life and light and to instill darkness further and further. Just to remind you, another important aspect of vampires in the archetypal understanding of them is they always need permission to enter the house. Just remember that as I continue and explain this. Okay, what the fuck does this have to do with relationships? What does a vampire have to do with relationships? Okay, hear me out. Let me cook for a second. Before an argument begins, okay, a fearful thought enters the mind of a person. A thought of insecurity, jealousy, or a deep-rooted judgment. For example, I look at my partner and she could be wearing something suggestive, right? My mind then creates a story of she wants to go and get male validation. She doesn't love me. Who the fuck is she to do this to me? I'm the man. How can this happen, right? So I believe a thought of insecurity and fear and judgment that then puts me in a state of being where I'm taking her life away from her because I'm projecting all this darkness to her, which will consume her. Okay? Now, what's interesting about the archetype is I'm giving consent to this consciousness to overtake my mind, right? Because when the archetype of the vampire knocks on the door, what does that mean? It means that it'll present you with a thought that if you believe, you give them consent to take over your consciousness. So if I have a thought, my partner wears something suggestive, quote unquote, and I think she's a whore, how can she wear that? She wants to get male validation. If I have that thought and I say, whoa, that's not love, that's fear, that's separation, that's not honoring her free will or my respect of her, those thoughts are not welcome here. I do not consent to those thoughts. I'm safe, right? But if I believe the thought is true, I now consent to the vampiric archetype to take over my mind and to consume her light and spread darkness. So that's what it means when a vampire has to be invited in the house. What that means is when you have a fearful thought about your lover, rooted in judgment, and you believe it, you're giving consent to the vampire to be invited into your house, which is your consciousness, your body, your mind. So the darkness always needs consent to operate in your mind. And that consent is simply believing the thought. Okay. Now, in terms of how this spreads to the partner, let's use a thought of jealousy. Let's say let's say a girl's name pops up on my phone. My partner has insecurity and she doesn't trust me. And this is theoretical. This is not rooted. This doesn't happen, thankfully, to my relationship. And she sees that text and she's like, "You're cheating on me. What the fuck's wrong with you? How can you do this? How can you be texting a girl?" Right? Now, her believing a fearful thought not rooted in truth and allowing the energy of vampire to come into her mind is now bitten into my neck and taking my life away because she's now throwing all this on me, saying, "You're a cheater, you're wrong, you don't love me." Now my life's taken away because the person I love is accusing me of things I never did. So we're now both in the vampiric consciousness of taking, right? So now she says, "How the fuck can you do this? You're a cheater." I'm like, "No, I'm not. Fuck you. You're wrong. What the fuck do you think that?" Now we're both biting each other's necks. We're both taking light away from each other and further separating into the vampire consciousness. Whenever one side believes a fearful thought about the other, the vampiric consciousness is taken over and you're both ready to bite each other. So what's the solution? The solution, or the antidote to vampire consciousness, the archetype of the vampire that exists in our collective field, is a full fucking devotion to love. What does that mean? I refuse to believe and give consent to any thoughts to enter my mind that are not rooted in love. Any thought rooted in fear does not have consent to enter my mind in the form of a belief. I only believe thoughts of love. Okay, let's dive deeper to give evidence as why this is real. In any story, in any myth, what's the solution to a vampire or a demon beyond garlic and hot water, which I can unpack if you're curious in a later episode as to why that is. Why is it garlic? Why is it holy water? It's casting out the vampire, the demon, in the name of Jesus. In Jesus' name, I repent. Okay, why is that the solution in mythology? To say the name of Christ. Now, I believe in Jesus. I'm not a Christian, but I love Jesus. But I'm going to go about it from a more logical, psychological, archetypal lens, which is as useful. What does Christ mean? What does the symbol of Christ mean? The archetype of Christ mean? Let's go into, what was Jesus' most important teaching? Which is essentially, love thy neighbor as yourself and love God with all your heart. That's the core of what Jesus, Yeshua, represented. Which is, again, love your neighbor as yourself, love God with all your heart. That's the crux of what Jesus taught. Okay, so why is the energy that believes this the antidote to a vampiric consciousness? Why is that? Okay, because if I love my partner as myself, I will treat her in a way that I wish I was treated, which means I bypass my ego and move more into love to say, I know you're angry, I know what's happening right now, but I will treat you in a loving way I wish I was treated in the same circumstance. That's real love. That's unification. That's saying, I may not think you're right, but I love you, I understand you, I'm trying to unify with you and fix this, right? And, that's the first part. What does loving God with all your heart mean? Okay, of course, there's the figure of God, which I believe in. You don't have to believe in that. It means, God, if I could understand it in a more archetypal lens, is on one level, truth. If God is what's real, then what's real is almost always just the truth, because the truth is what's most real. So devotion to God has to be devotion to truth. So if you love God with all your heart, you just love truth with all your heart. And if you're devoted to truth, that means you can't believe any thoughts that aren't rooted in truth. And any thought that's fearful is never true. Ever. Really, like maybe 1 in a million, but it's almost always never true. So why is the antidote to a vampiric entity entering your consciousness to repent in the name of Jesus? It's because Jesus represents loving your neighbor as yourself and loving God with all your heart. What does that mean? That I bypass my ego's need to be right, my ego's need to believe an idea that's going to separate us, and to treat you with pure love as I want to be treated, and devote myself to the truth as much as possible. So the antidote to the vampiric consciousness is to refuse to believe any thought rooted in fear, because any thought rooted in fear is not true. If you're devoted to God, you're devoted to truth. And God, at its purest form, is just love, which means I'm devoted to truth and love. And therefore, I can't treat you with the belief of fear, because that's spreading fear, not love and truth. Furthermore, since Jesus is the answer to repenting these demons and vampires, it means I have to treat you as someone I wish treated me with love. So I'll meet you with as much love as possible and not spread the force that takes light away by giving darkness. So that's one solution, which is the devotion to love and truth as a consciousness and declaring a war against the vampiric consciousness, which means simply devoting yourself to any beliefs that aren't rooted in truth or love, and to treat the person in front of you as you wish you were treated if the person loved you. So now, in moments where my ego might think that my partner's wrong, a jealous thought comes in, I say, is that thought true? Is that thought rooted in love? If it's not, I ignore it. Now, if it is, and there's actually a problem that's true and real, I go to her and treat her as someone that I love deeply and I wish I was treated with. So that's a big solution. Now, from a higher 7th dimensional perspective, this is where things get this is like a master level way to live outside the vampire consciousness, is to fully exist beyond mind. Because as I explained, the mind always creates problems. The mind always has to fix, because the mind can only be happy if its expectations of reality are met. Since the mind's expectations will almost never be met, to trust the mind means to trust a path that will always make you suffer. If you trust a path that always makes you suffer, you'll always be in a battle you can never win. So what's the solution? To live in the heart. That's it. The heart has no identity. The heart doesn't understand separation. Since the heart doesn't understand separation, there is no you. There's no ego. There's just love, right? If I see my partner from my mind, she's a problem I have to fix constantly. If I see her from my heart, she's a perfect person worthy of all my love. So the consciousness shift has to go away from mind to heart, Because in the heart, there is no separation. And when there's no separation, there's no me. When there's no me, there's no right or wrong. There's just love. So devotion to love is a devotion to existing beyond mind, because the mind can never love, because the mind is designed to fix problems that are never there. So when we devote ourselves to love, the consciousness of love, we're devoting ourselves to exist beyond mind and to live in a state of being that there's no separation. And if there's no separation at its purest form, there is no ego, because the ego is a belief that I am separate. I am a character separate from the whole ocean. I'm a drop that's separated. My perspective of what I think should be right is more important than truth itself. So when you devote yourself to living in the heart as a self, there is no you. When there's no you, there's no need to be right. The need to be right is a need to reinforce your ego. And the heart knows no separation because there is no ego. There's just love. Okay. To conclude, love is not a feeling. It is a consciousness. When you commit to the consciousness of love, that's when you actually fall in love, because you're devoting yourself to treating someone with love no matter what you feel. So you have to consult constantly the consciousness of love as a force field, which essentially means the force that unifies, and to not trust and believe any thought rooted in fear that causes you to separate. To love someone means to always meet them in the consciousness of love, even if you don't feel the feeling of love in the moment. You can be angry as fuck at your partner, but since you live in the consciousness of love, that anger doesn't matter anymore because there's no you, there's just love. Okay. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to watch more content, please click this video right here and don't forget to subscribe right here. Thank you.